Our world is a library of forgotten stories. Its mountains and oceans are the pages, its deserts and forests the ink. Most of these stories are written in a language we understand, the language of geology, of evolution, of slow, predictable change. It's a narrative of cause and effect, of pressures and reactions, written over billions of years. But every now and then, as we turn these stony pages, we find a passage, an inscription, that defies translation. A chapter that seems to have been written by another hand, in a language we have long since forgotten, telling a tale that orthodox history insists could never have happened. In the vast, unforgiving heart of the Mauritanian desert, in a golden sea of sand that stretches for 1,000 unforgiving miles, lies one such inscription. A feature so enormous, so geometrically perfect, so utterly out of place, that for most of human history, we didn't even know it was there. It is a series of perfect concentric rings, etched into the earth on a scale that beggars belief. We call it the Richat Structure. But its more poetic name, the name whispered by those who dare to question, is far more fitting, the Eye of the Sahara. For decades, we have been told this is a natural wonder, a spectacular fluke of geology. But what if it's something more? What if this is not a story about rock and time, but about flesh and blood, ambition and ruin? What if it's the remnant of a story that has haunted humanity's collective memory for over 2,000 years? The story of a lost city, a legendary civilization that possessed technology and wisdom beyond its time. The story of Atlantis. The resemblance is not just passing. It is mathematically, structurally, and geographically profound. The details are shocking. The correlations are too numerous to be dismissed. And the questions they raise are deeply unsettling. Are we looking at the greatest coincidence in planetary history? A geological Rorschach test onto which we project our myths? Or are we staring at the gravestone of a lost empire, a city hidden in plain sight? Its existence challenging the very foundations of known history? To truly understand the depth of this mystery, we must first give the official explanation its due. To mainstream science, the case of the Richat Structure is intriguing, but ultimately closed. Geologists classify it as a highly symmetrical and deeply eroded domal uplift, a feature known as a laccolith. The theory is elegant in its simplicity. It states that around 100 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period when dinosaurs still roamed the Earth, powerful magmatic activity from deep within the planet's mantle pushed upwards. This molten rock, however, did not have enough force to break through the surface and erupt as a volcano. Instead, it pooled beneath the crust, forcing the overlying layers of sedimentary rock, sandstone, limestone, quartzite, to bulge upwards into a massive, blister-like dome. Dozens of kilometers across, this dome, a silent, sleeping giant, remained intact for millions of years. Then, the relentless forces of erosion, wind, and water from a wetter, greener era of the Sahara began their patient work. They stripped away the top of the dome, layer by layer, exposing its internal structure like the slow, meticulous dissection of a colossal organism. The rings we see today are the exposed edges of these different rock layers. The harder, more resistant quartzite forms the high, circular ridges, while the softer rocks have been worn away to form the circular valleys between them. The result, according to the consensus, is a natural masterpiece of geological sculpture, a testament to the slow, blind artistry of planetary forces. Men of science, like the esteemed French geologist Gustave Richat, who first studied the structure in the mid-20th century, saw it as a geological curiosity. For them, any resemblance to a man-made city is a classic case of pareidolia. Our brain's powerful, and sometimes misleading, tendency to see patterns, like faces in the clouds or canals on Mars. They point to the AGE of the rock, hundreds of millions of years old, as definitive, irrefutable proof. How could a human civilization, which has only existed for a tiny fraction of that time, build a city with materials that predate them by an entire geological era? To mainstream science, the debate is over. Before it begins, the eye of the Sahara is a masterpiece of nature, not of man, but where science sees a closed case. A growing number of independent researchers see a trail of evidence that has been overlooked, or perhaps willfully ignored. They argue that the official explanation, while plausible, is dangerously incomplete. It functions as a comfortable, tidy answer that discourages further questions. It leaves too many anomalies unexplained, too many coincidences papered over. They believe that these coincidences are piling up too high to be dismissed as mere chance. To find their proof, they don't look at rocks, but at one of the oldest and most influential texts in Western civilization, a document that has been debated, dissected, and dismissed for centuries. Let's go back to the source. Around 360 B.C., the Greek philosopher Plato, in his famous dialogues Timaeus and Critias, wrote down the story of Atlantis. He was careful to state that this was not a myth he had invented. It was, he claimed, a true history, passed down to his ancestor, the great Athenian statesman Solon. Solon, in turn, had learned it from Egyptian priests at the Temple of Sais, guardians of records that stretched back into the mists of time. This was not presented as a fairy tale, it was presented as a historical account. The history of a mighty, seafaring empire that existed 9,000 years before their time, and which waged war against the ancient Athenians before being destroyed in a single, terrible day and night. Plato's description of the capital city of this empire, also called Atlantis, is stunning in its specificity. He wrote of a city made of concentric rings of land and water, created by the sea god Poseidon himself. The Richat Structure is a series of concentric rings. He described a central island, which was the heart of the royal palace. This was surrounded by a ring of water, which was in turn surrounded by a ring of land, then another ring of water, and a final, larger ring of land. The Richat structure has a central plateau and clear evidence of 3 eroded, concentric valleys that were once likely filled with water, separated by 2 distinct rings of higher ground. The blueprint matches. Plato wrote that the city was built using 3 types of stone, which were quarried from beneath the city itself. 1 white, 1 black, and 1 red. The exposed geological layers of the Richat structure are predominantly composed of rocks of these very colors. He described mountains to the north of the city, which protected it from the cold north wind, and were famed for their beauty, and the villages nestled in their valleys. Just to the north of the Richat structure lie the Kidiat Ej Jil mountain range, providing a perfect geographical anchor to the description. He even provided measurements, a detail that many who dismiss the story conveniently forget. According to a careful analysis of Plato's text, converting the ancient Greek unit of stadia to modern measurements, the total diameter of the capital city of Atlantis was approximately 127 stadia. This translates, using the most common conversion, to 23.5 kilometers. The diameter of the Richat structure's most prominent outer ring? It is 23.5 kilometers. This is not a vague similarity. It is an exact, one-to-one, verifiable mathematical match. This is no longer pareidolia. This is a statistical improbability of the highest order. A single match could be a coincidence. 2 might be a curiosity. But this many direct, verifiable correlations in layout, color, geography, and precise measurement? This begins to look less like a random geological formation. Of course, the most glaring objection, the one that is always raised, is the location. Atlantis, as every story tells, was a great naval power that sank beneath the waves. The eye of the Sahara is in the middle of one of the driest deserts on Earth. Landlocked, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest ocean. How could this possibly be Atlantis? The answer lies beneath the sand. We have been conditioned to see the Sahara as an eternal, unchanging wasteland. But that is a failure of our own limited perspective. We now have irrefutable scientific evidence that the Sahara was not always a desert. As recently as 6,000 years ago, it was a vibrant, green landscape of savannas and woodlands, crisscrossed by enormous river systems and dotted with vast freshwater lakes. This period is known as the African humid period. We have found the fossils of crocodiles, elephants, and hippos in the heart of what is now barren desert. Modern satellite radar has pierced the veil of sand, mapping the ghostly outlines of these prehistoric ecosystems. It has revealed the Tamanrasset River, a prehistoric river system that, if it flowed today, would be the 12th largest in the world, flowing right past the location of the Richat Structure on its way to the Atlantic Ocean. Plato describes a huge, man-made canal, 50 stadia long, about 9 kilometers, that connected the city of Atlantis to the sea, allowing ships to sail right into its inner harbors. The geography of the region perfectly supports this. A clear, eroded channel leads south from the eye, precisely in the direction of the ancient riverbed and the coast. The city wasn't necessarily times on the coast, but connected to it by a waterway, exactly as the text describes. And what of the cataclysm that destroyed it? Plato spoke of violent earthquakes and floods that consumed the city in a single day and night of misfortune. For a long time, this was dismissed as mythical hyperbole. But a powerful and growing scientific theory, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, suggests that around 12,800 years ago, a fragmented comet struck the Earth. The impacts, centered on the North American ice sheet, were a cataclysmic event. They triggered the instantaneous melting of vast glaciers, causing a rapid sea level rise and mega-floods on a scale our modern world has never witnessed. Such an event would have not only been capable of destroying a coastal or river-connected civilization, but also of radically and permanently altering the global climate, triggering the abrupt desertification of North Africa and ending the Green Sahara. The story of a world-ending flood is not just in Plato. It is a traumatic memory encoded in the myths and legends of over 200 cultures worldwide. But this leads to the final, critical question. The one that, for many, is the ultimate stumbling block. If this was a massive city, a center of civilization, where are the artifacts? Where are the temples, the statues, the pottery, the tools? Mainstream archaeologists are quick to point out that not a single, unambiguously man-made artifact has ever been officially recovered from within the Richat structure that would prove the existence of a city. For them, this lack of physical evidence is the final nail in the coffin of the Atlantis theory. But the challengers, once again, ask a different, more pertinent question. Has anyone actually looked? The Richat structure is enormous, spanning an area larger than many modern cities. It is located in a remote, politically unstable region of the world. There has never been a single, large-scale, comprehensive archaeological excavation of the site with the stated goal of finding a lost civilization. The handful of geological surveys that have been conducted were looking for rock types and mineral deposits, not the foundations of ancient buildings or the subtle traces of human settlement. It's a classic catch-22. Academics won't approve funding to dig for Atlantis because it's considered a fringe myth, and it will remain a fringe myth until a properly funded expedition finds incontrovertible proof. Is it possible that the theory of Atlantis is so ridiculed in academic circles, so tainted by centuries of fanciful speculation, that any serious investigation is considered career suicide? That the gatekeepers of history are so invested in the established timeline of human civilization, the slow, linear progression from hunter-gatherers to farmers to city dwellers, that they are unwilling to even entertain a discovery that would force them to rewrite every textbook. The evidence, the independent researchers argue, isn't missing. It's simply waiting, buried under millennia of sand and sediment. For a generation of archaeologists brave enough to look past the dogma and follow the data wherever it may lead. The geological argument about the age of the rock can also be re-examined. No one is suggesting the Atlanteans' times, created times, the rock 100 million years ago. They are suggesting that this advanced civilization found this unique, pre-existing geological structure and used it as the foundation for their capital city. The concentric rings of hard quartzite would have formed natural, defensive walls. The valleys between them could have been easily flooded to create the canals Plato described. The Atlanteans were master landscape architects, shaping and enhancing a natural wonder to suit their needs. This idea of an advanced prehistoric civilization is no longer as far-fetched as it once was. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a massive megalithic complex dated to 11,600 years ago, proves that sophisticated, large-scale construction was possible thousands of years before historians thought it was. If Göbekli Tepe could exist, why not a coastal civilization like Atlantis? Let's piece together the grand, heretical narrative. Imagine a time, some 15,000 years ago. North Africa is a temperate, fertile paradise. A unique geological formation, the Richat Dome, provides a perfect, naturally fortified location for the capital of a burgeoning maritime culture. Over thousands of years, they develop into a sophisticated civilization. They build their city within the rings of the dome. Their empire expands, their power grows, but their success breeds arrogance. They launch a campaign of conquest. And just as their power reaches its zenith, the planet itself strikes back. A comet fragments and slams into the Earth. The world is plunged into chaos. Mega tsunamis and catastrophic floods sweep across the globe. The city of Atlantis is inundated, shattered, and ultimately buried. The climate shifts, the Sahara dries out, and the memory of this great civilization survives only in fragmented myths. For millennia, the story is considered a fable. Until one day, in the 20th century, we fly high enough to see it again. A ghost of a city, looking up at us from the heart of the desert. Is this story true? We do not know. But it is a story that fits the evidence, the geographical, textual, climatological, and emerging archaeological evidence far better than simple coincidence. The Eye of the Sahara remains an enigma. A geological masterpiece that just so happens to mirror the most legendary lost city of all time. In a dozen different, specific, and measurable ways. Whether it's a cosmic coincidence of unparalleled scale, or the final resting place of Atlantis, its silent, unwavering gaze continues to challenge everything we think we know about our planet's distant, shrouded past. The final verdict, for now, is left up to you.